Uh, yeah. So these were the three things, and we have clearly understood that there is a measurable parameter, that is the coefficient of expansion, linear volume, and area. And we have these values also. For example, here, this one, some values of volume expansion coefficient are given for different metals. So aluminium, brass. Okay, brass is not a metal, but yes, certain materials like glass, rubber, and like this, you have other data also for alpha L also. Yeah, alpha L is also given in the textbooks. So same thing. The materials and their corresponding response to heat when it is a change in length. Now, all of these coefficients, uh, they are defined as fractional change per unit change in temperature, isn't it? So this change could be anything. It could be an increment, or it could be a, a decrease in the dimension also, which means that not only these coefficients hold valid for expansion, but they also hold valid for contraction also. So we know that on cooling, basically, there will be contraction of materials, and that too will be measured by this same coefficient. Uh, yeah, that's what, delta V it is. So that change could be anything. It could be a decrease or it could be an increase. So specifically in our syllabus, and even, yeah, because it's something that we observe around us, special mention of water should be made over here. There is a very specific behavior of water, and it leads to a very important consequence. It's related to this only, expansion and contraction in response to heating or cooling. So in general, we know that materials, they always expand when they are subjected to heat, and on the other hand, when they are cooled down, so they contract, they undergo contraction. However, coming to this, special property of water, water shows a special kind of behavior which leads to a very important consequence. And this behavior of water is said to be anomalous behavior. And anomalous term, probably you've come across it in chemistry. Maybe usually this term is used when we are discussing something which is out of trend. Okay, so the general trend is that, materials, they expand on heating and contract on cooling. However, this particular behavior of water is known as anomalous behavior of water. And what is that behavior? Behavior is that when we discuss cooling, so basically it contracts, but it only contracts up to 4 degrees. And as you cool it further and further, as you cool it further and further, what happens is that it starts to actually contract. Sorry, it starts to expand, which is completely, out of trend. And this actually leads to a very important consequence. When it starts to expand below 4 degrees Celsius, which means between, freezing and this 4 degrees Celsius, when it starts to expand, basically what it's doing is it's increasing its density. Or in other words, the density actually increases below 4 degrees Celsius. And this way, what happens is that there's a very important consequence. So it's got to do with the fact that, how aquatic life is actually, what do we say, saved or, protected because of this behavior of water. We are aware that, in winters, in the polar and the tundra regions, we have this, freezing of ponds and lakes, right? When it's like extreme snowfall time, a period of extreme snowfall time, we say like this, ponds and lakes, they get frozen, but then clearly they don't get frozen till the bottom. And in this way, the aquatic life is actually saved. And this thing is actually attributed to this anomalous behavior. So what is the, the whole situation that is, what do we say, that is occurring, because of which only the surface gets, what do we say, frozen, and the remaining water at, at depth, that actually remains warmer. So let's see that how this particular behavior of water can be used to explain. So as, it starts cooling, reaches 4 degrees Celsius, it is contracting, but then on reaching 4 degrees Celsius, it starts to expand, and hence it becomes less denser. And in becoming less denser, this water, which is of somewhere between 0 to 4 degrees Celsius, this water actually this water goes less denser, right? Yes, so this one floats on top. Yes. So the water which is between 0 to 4 degrees Celsius, that one floats on top. And the remaining water, which is beyond 4 degrees Celsius, which means it's the warmer water, that actually sinks down. All right. And this forms only the upper layer. Only the upper layer gets affected and forms the ice on the upper layer. And in this way, actually, aquatic life is protected because of this behavior of water. Only on the side, I'm giving you this information. It's not really a part of our syllabus because I'm going to the molecular level. That how is this explained? This behavior of water. It's got to do with the molecular structure, which is more of the chemistry side. But just as a side information, if you do some more digging, we will find that it's actually got to do with the structure of water. So you are aware of that common example that why does ice float on water, even though we know that I mean, we understand that solids are actually more denser than liquids. So it's got to do at the molecular level. In the, what do we say, ice structure, basically, we see that they are arranged in a certain manner and they are arranged in this certain manner because of which we see that there is more space between the molecules, and that actually makes it less denser. So this is what's happening, and yeah, on the molecular level. But yeah, I mean, I told you this is only some side information. If you go into more detail, this behavior, or rather, I should say, this structure of water will come again in another discussion that we will be doing in the next topic. So yeah. So this finishes the first part, which was the expansion of materials in response to heat. Or yes, it goes for contraction also. The same discussion is also made for contraction. I'll be making you mark this anomalous behavior, but later on in your textbooks, I'll make you mark. Or okay, fine. Before we move to the next topic, we can do that. Uh, sorry. So you can come to the textbooks and you will find that this particular discussion of water you will find on page 206 in the new textbook. And if you want to, yeah, if you want to know the topic is it's a big topic actually under thermal expansion. You have all this introduction of alpha A, alpha V, and everything, alpha L, and here. Anyway, yes, alpha L, alpha A, all this introduction is there. And then here there's actually this table, the table which tells you about alpha V, I believe. This is alpha V. Let me just check a minute. Yeah, this is alpha V 10.2. So below that, there is the discussion of anomalous behavior of water. Mm, yeah. So you can mark it from here about water. Water exhibits from here, just below the table. You can mark it from here. Water exhibits anomalous behavior. It contracts on heating between 0 to 4 degrees Celsius. So this is heating, but then the same thing can be reversed and understood in terms of contraction. So the volume of the given water decreases as it is cooled from room temperature until 4 degrees Celsius. And then below 4, the volume starts to increase. Therefore, the density decreases. Okay, so this decreasing of density itself actually makes the water float. And what is the particular temperature of this water? What is the specific property of this water, the one which is floating? It is at 0 to 4 degrees Celsius, which means this is the one that becomes ice. And the warm water, which is above 4 degrees Celsius, that one actually sinks to the bottom, which is useful in yeah, saving the aquatic life. So all the discussion is there. This means that the water has maximum density, and then the property has an important environmental effect. The whole thing here, this whole thing, lakes and ponds, okay, becomes denser and sinks, warmer and less dense water. Yeah, near the bottom rises. Okay. However, once the cold water on the top reaches the temperature 4 degrees, it becomes less dense and remains on the surface. And this is where it freezes. So this whole discussion you can underline over here. Usually, such questions come in assertion reason, but yeah, you should understand the concept basically. Okay, so yes, moving on to the next part of this chapter. Uh, Next part is the discussion of how, uh, yeah, like heat plays a role in change of state, or rather, we in our higher classes now we call it phase changes. Uh, I'll be answering these questions later. I don't know. Maybe I'll take a screenshot or something, or you can send me in the what do we say, WhatsApp group if you want, or you can send me directly. All right. Coefficient of water negative of water in the range. I'll have to see this. Uh, mm, yes, you can send these questions later. Maybe I'll take a screenshot. I'm not sure about that. If I get time, I'll take a screenshot, or you can send it. Uh, yes, in the WhatsApp message. Yes, coming to the next part, what is the role of heat in change of states, or which we call phase changes? All right, so yeah, we will be discussing the role of heat in that. So this is a graph which shows particularly the what do we say, change of state of water, and this one actually basically introduces to us two forms of heat which are involved in carrying out the full change of state, from ice to water and then from water to steam. And this particular graph is of water behavior it is. All right. So, sorry. So, this whole discussion will be made over here. And like I said, what do we say? Two different forms of heat will be introduced. One form of heat is related to, the while the change is taking place, and one form of heat is related to uh, the heat that is associated with change in temperature. When it comes to change in temperature, we note from this graph. You must be aware of this graph and you must be understanding what is happening. It's very simple. Like, the more the heat you provide, okay, so heat is increasing in this direction. And the more heat you provide, the more temperature that, substance will absorb. And at the melting point, we all are aware of this from ninth grade. You must be knowing from ninth grade discussion that when we, just 1 minute. Some of your names I'm not able to understand, so I'm just muting everyone. If you have any doubt, please use that raise hand option. Yes, so as we increase the heat, or we provide heat to water in this case, the temperature keeps increasing, and then comes this point, right? The melting point. We all are aware. We have done this in nine that basically the you will keep providing heat. Okay, this much heat you'll be providing, but none of it will be reflected in the thermometer. For example, we're using a thermometer to measure the change in temperature. So where does that heat go? So that is one form of heat, which is, if you recall from ninth grade, it's called latent heat, isn't it? It's latent meaning hidden, basically. Hidden, why? Because it's not being detected by the thermometer. So what is that heat used up for? That is one form of heat we will be discussing. Another one, yes, not another one, just continuing with the graph. So as we continue with the graph, we see that once it has turned completely into liquid state, then again the providing of heat to that particular mass of water will now start reflecting. And where will that heat go? That heat will go in changing the temperature. And in this particular case, it will be going to raise the temperature of water. And then, again, from 0 to degree Celsius, the heat will be taken in the form of, or rather, I should say, heat will be taken up to raise the temperature. Whereas here in this part, the heat was taken up to change the phase. All right. Yes, so from here to here, the heat will be taken up to change the temperature, and then again here at the boiling point, we see that the temperature will remain constant, and even though heat is being provided, okay, like this. There's a kink that is shown over here. This is just to tell you that, basically this graph is not to scale, that's what's written, and it means that this is actually much more longer. All right, in other words, the amount of heat that is required to change the phase from liquid to gas is actually a lot, and they haven't reflected it over here. It's not being shown over here, it's just shown in the form of a kink like this. All right, so anyway, again we see that there is, the temperature is constant and heat is being provided, and that heat is again being taken up in the form of latent heat. All right, this particular heat is known as latent heat of vaporization, and here we know that it is called latent heat of fusion, okay, which is represented as LF. And then, yes, again, if you keep giving temperature, or if you keep providing heat, rather, if you keep providing heat, then the steam will also respond by changing its temperature, or raising its temperature. So few, this is the general understanding. However, there are a few points to be discussed here. For example, yes, 1 minute. So first thing that we should know some terminology we should know, and we should know different forms of heat which are involved throughout the change in state. So first thing, this condition in which the heat is being provided, and there is no change in temperature. It is said to we say it like this, that ice and water are existing in what do we say, thermal equilibrium. So both ice and water are at the same temperature. So that that phrase you should know, that both of them are existing in thermal what do we say, thermal equilibrium. And that is how the boiling point of water is defined. It is defined as the temperature at which both ice and water coexist in thermal equilibrium. All right. So this is how boiling point will be defined. All that I'll give you in the textbook. You'll be marking it in the textbook. Then another thing, oh, I said boiling. I'm talking about this part. Yes, melting. Okay. Ice and water exist in thermal equilibrium is known as melting point. Okay. And yes, associated heat is known as latent heat of fusion. Particularly this heat, which I was talking about, I said that heat will be taken up in two ways. And one of the ways is that one of the ways in which heat will be taken up is to break the bonds, which is what we associate with latent heat. All right, and that heat we are going to denote with Q. All right, so this heat is actually proportional to mass. Okay, and this is the form that the heat is taken up as. Okay, or in other words, if you bring m to the other side, then latent heat will be defined as the amount of heat. Q is going to be the representation of heat. You probably know this from chemistry, maybe. All right, so latent heat is defined as the amount of heat required to uh, bring about the transformation from whatever. If it's latent heat of fusion, then bring the transformation from ice to water per unit uh, kg, basically, or per unit mass of a substance. That is how latent heat is defined. And the same discussion also holds true for the boiling part also, which should be emphasized, that we say this stage is said to be a stage in which liquid and gaseous form are coexisting in thermal equilibrium. And this is how boiling point is defined. Boiling point is defined as a temperature at which both water and steam are existing in thermal equilibrium. So thermal equilibrium means at the same temperature. And the heat which is taken up again over here in order to bring the phase change is known as latent heat of vaporization. It is defined as, and yes, this one will become LV. Okay, it is defined as the amount of heat that is required to bring the change from liquid to gaseous state per unit mass of a substance. All right, this is how latent heat is defined, and mathematically, this is how we get latent heat, uh, where Q is the heat that is absorbed or in the other way also, because this is only in the sense of raising the temperature, but if you are decreasing the temperature also, so we say Q is the heat that is absorbed or rejected by the substance. All right, so basically I'm going to ask you to draw this diagram, or this graph basically, and you can mark this point. Actually, you can leave out phase change over here, leave out this, and I'm going to ask you to mark 1, 2, and 3, the regions basically. Okay, so this is region 1, this is region 2, this one is region 2, all right, and this one is region 3. So 1 and 2 have the same discussion, and there are certain concepts that you should know in these particular regions. Oh, in these particular regions, M is the mass. Yes, okay. Uh, Yes, 1 and 2 have the same types of discussion, same concepts. So, you should know what is coexisting in thermal equilibrium. You should know how to define melting point. You should know how to define latent heat of fusion. You should know what is latent heat of fusion, and you should know its mathematical formula. So, what I'm going to ask you to do is that give a reference to the textbook, all right? And particularly in the textbook, these are the things that you should be knowing. I will be giving you everything in underlining. Basically, I'm going to make you underline in the textbook, but this is for your notes purposes. In the notes, you can draw this graph, draw it big and clear. All right, you can draw this graph, mark these regions 1, 2, and 3. All right, so region 1 basically corresponds to the first point. Okay, you should know these terminology and everything. Similarly, region 2 corresponds to all these things going coexisting in thermal equilibrium, definition of boiling point, and in what form is the heat taken up. It's taken up in the form which is associated with latent heat. Q is equal to M into L. So that's how I'm going to give you in the notes, and rest of the points I'm going to make you mark in the textbook. So what you can do is right now give the heading change of state, all right, and draw this diagram. Just draw it big. I'll give you 2 minutes. uh, no need to use a scale, students. Just draw it. I wouldn't say roughly, but then, yeah, like we don't have time. So try to draw as straight lines as possible. I'll just give you 2 minutes. Please quickly note down only this graph for now. For now, just note down this graph. And yes, you can leave out this phase change and rather, put 1 year like this. Okay, this is your region 1. And similarly here also you can leave out this phase change. You can just mark region 2 over here, okay, like this. And the last one is region 3. So just draw the graph quickly. So I was reading these questions some students sent in the chat regarding coefficient of volume expansion. The data that has been given in the textbook doesn't particularly point out that it's negative. But yeah, mathematically it would come out negative only. We can again, dig a little more deeper in that. Yeah. Uh, Other than that, yes, about air getting trapped in ice. So probably that also plays a role. However, at the molecular level also, uh, this is explained about, ice floating on water. And yeah, that's how, this less denser and lesser temperature also comes on top. Okay, I hope you all have drawn this graph now. You can actually start writing also. So below the graph, you can write, okay, refer to TV for following discussion. You should know these different concepts. So first one is coexistence and thermal equilibrium. You should know what is melting point, latent heat of fusion. All that I'll give you, like I said, in the textbook. I'll give it to you. Similarly, even the second point also you can note it down in your notebook. Those of you who missed the last class, I forgot to inform you. You can leave two plain sides. You probably have already drawn the graph, but yeah, just informing you. Two plain sides is enough for last class. So next we'll be moving to the discussion of region 3, and not much discussion actually. There's one parameter that is introduced over here, which is actually the form of heat. So when heat is taken up in such type of regions, it can be three. I mean, the one between what do you say, melting point and boiling point, and the same stands for others also beyond 100 degrees Celsius and below. Actually, this heat is particularly related to change in temperature, whereas latent heat, or the heat Q, which was associated with latent heat, that was only associated with breaking the bond. So there was no change in temperature, and you can see that mathematically also there is no factor of delta T over here. However, there is this other form of heat which is associated with the change in temperature. So we define a parameter which is known as heat capacity, and sorry, it is defined as the amount of heat that is required to bring a unit change in temperature. However, this is like a very general definition or general relation between heat and temperature. Heat capacity S, this one. It has been found that equal amounts of heat is not taken up by different materials. Rather, there seems to be some relationship with mass also, that how much mass is actually being subjected to heat, and hence how the change in temperature is taking place. In other words, the same amount of heat is not, it has been observed, is not absorbed by different masses to bring the same change in temperature. All right. So that's what we include a factor. Basically, we kind of standardize it. We standardize this measuring of how much heat is required. We standardize it in the form of, not in the form of, but in the sense of mass. So we define another parameter, just specific heat capacity, okay, represented by small s, or sometimes in some sources it is also represented with small c. All right. And yes, it is defined as basically the same thing, the amount of heat required to bring a unit change per unit mass of a substance. Okay, so delta Q by delta T, but then per unit mass. So there is a factor of, oh sorry, this is T. There is a factor of mass also that comes into the picture, just to standardize it. So then now with 1 kg mass, we will be able to, when we compare different materials by heating 1 kg of mass, we will be able to understand that how each of them are absorbing, or how much heat are they absorbing in order to bring a unit change in temperature in order to raise the temperature by 1 degree Celsius. Similarly, another standard parameter we can use for what do we say same thing, that how much heat is required to bring a unit change, is per unit mole. So this is known as molar specific heat capacity, and mathematically it's the same thing, that amount of heat required to bring a unit change in temperature per unit mole of a substance. So these are some uh, heat capacities, or rather, I should say, some parameters that have been introduced over here per unit mole. In the textbook, mole has been represented as mu. So that's the thing. What we notice here is this is that region in which there is a change in temperature that is taking place corresponding to heat. And if you actually get an expression for q alone over here, this q is there, right? So if you bring an expression for q alone, we find that this q, or this heat, is actually associated with change in temperature. So q is equal to ms delta t. This is how it is defined. This is that other form of heat which I was talking about. So heat is taken up in two ways, or rather, I should say, for two things. One of them is to bring a transformation which is associated with latent heat, and it is mathematically defined as Q is equal to M into L, okay, where capital L is latent heat and M is the mass. And on the other hand, this other heat is taken up to what do we say, raise the temperature, and that Q is mathematically defined as ms delta t, or mc delta t. Yeah, some sources use small c also. Okay, so sorry, these are the things that you should know again from the discussion of change of state of water. So I'm going to ask you to note this down under for region 3 basically. So point 3, this one. Here we get introduced to this parameter, the other heat which is used up to bring a change in temperature. So you can note this down quickly. Just point number 3 basically. And you can underline specific heat capacity because that's what we are going to use in our, what do we say, in numericals and all. There is another thing also which needs to be pointed out during this whole, phase change process. It's regarding how pressure affects the boiling point and melting point of a substance. So that also we'll be seeing before we, what do we say, finish with this topic. Uh, Okay, so I hope you have noted this down. Coming to the next part, like I said, in this discussion of phase change itself, it is also important to point out that pressure also plays a role. In fact, in defining the melting points and boiling points, it is important that we state the pressure. So, obviously, since we are setting a standard definition, so we define melting point and boiling point at standard pressure, which is atmospheric pressure. So, I'm just telling you that basically it's important to point out the pressure, because it turns out that pressure actually affects the melting point and boiling points of substances. So, in general, if the pressure decreases, so melting point and boiling point also decrease. And on the other hand, pressure when it increases, melting point and boiling point also increase. This can be attributed to the fact that when the pressure decreases, so you can think that the bonds are a little less tight, or whatever you want to call them, less forces, and therefore at a lower energy itself, we associate melting point and boiling point with heat, and heat is actually energy. So at lower energy itself, the what do we say the substance will be able to make a phase change. The same thing can even go for a higher pressure. All right, so yes, if the pressure increases, so now the bonds are more tighter and more amount of heat or more amount of energy is required, which means the melting point and boiling point increases. So this is the general behavior. However, Once again, water has a different behavior. We will come to that. Some examples have been discussed, regarding how the pressure affects the